All right, another episode of 49ers Intel. It's time to circle back, talk about the new assistant coach, Brandon Staley, because I think Staley has already had an impact on the 49ers acquisitions this offseason in free agency. This is a guy who's been a head coach and before that, a defensive coordinator who's left a relatively unique mark on the game. There's been a lot of talk about Brandon Staley and defensive innovation that he's brought to the table. And coaches borrow ideas from other coaches all the time. It's not like what Brandon Staley has brought to the game with the star position is brand new, but he employed the star position, which is a variation in the defensive backfield, in a couple different ways with two different types of players over the past several years. And it's worth wondering if he's going to bring that to the 49ers. And if he does bring that to the 49ers, will he use an existing veteran? Or do the 49ers also take Brandon Staley's advice in this coming draft? Because they just hosted Javon Bullard out of Georgia. So we'll talk about Bullard in a little bit and how he might fit. But first, we got to talk about Staley's influence in free agency. You see who the 49ers have picked up so far. The teal means signings that have already happened. Leonard Floyd and Isaac Yiadom are two players with whom Staley has already overlapped. He directly coached Leonard Floyd back when he was in charge of the guys up front in Chicago. And Leonard Floyd is now a 49er. He also directly coached Leonard Floyd when he was the coordinator of the Rams. So Floyd has followed Staley around. This is the third team that Floyd and Staley have shared. Isaac Yiadom, meanwhile, while Brandon Staley was the outside linebackers coach under Vic Fangio in Denver, Yiadom was a cornerback there for 2 years. So there is some connection here as well. But as you can see, Brandon Staley there are already some fingerprints on this defense from Brandon Staley. Now, the star position, I don't know if Isaac Yiadom is going to play the star position. In the past, Brandon Staley has had Jalen Ramsey with the Rams in 2020, and then Derwin James, the safety with the Chargers, play the star position. And it is that the rules can be versatile. Versatile is a funny word to use, pun intended there. The rules can be flexible at the star position because this is a position of versatility. You can have guys that are outside cornerbacks that move into the slot. Then they drop back into safety. Or you can have guys that are more primarily inside corners, more glorified linebacker types who drop back into some safety-like coverage. Or in the case of Derwin James, you can have a safety that comes up to the line of scrimmage, plays a whole lot closer to support the run. In the case of Jalen Ramsey, you saw a lot of inside-out activity at the cornerback position. He'd follow receivers into the slot because, I mean, the Rams themselves are a great example of this, right? You have Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was one of the best receivers in football. And Cooper Kupp lined up in the slot, 66, 67% of the time. So to cover Cooper Kupp, you better have a good corner on the inside. And sometimes the answer to that is to take your best guy from the outside and move him into the slot. Well, thankfully for the Rams in 2020 and Jalen Ramsey, they didn't have to cover Cooper Kupp, but the trend had established itself around the league, and the Rams used Jalen Ramsey in the star position under Brandon Staley to cover some of those inside receivers. So the star position is essentially a versatile defensive back. It could come in different shapes and sizes. The history of the star position does not begin with Brandon Staley. This is where it's really interesting. You can trace the star position all the way back to the early 90s when Bill Belichick, who we know is a defensive mastermind, was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Bill Belichick's defensive coordinator was Nick Saban. So the star was first kind of implemented there in the early 90s when passing attacks were starting to develop that third wide receiver with more consistency. Nick Saban eventually became the head coach for Dynasty at the University of Alabama. His longest tenured defensive coordinator at Alabama was Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart then became the head coach at the University of Georgia. So Smart took the star position that he had worked with at Alabama under Saban, that Saban had initially developed with Bill Belichick in Cleveland in the NFL. Kirby Smart took that star position to Georgia. The most recent star at Georgia is Javon Bullard. Today, word came from Steph Sanchez, who tracks all these draft visits so well, that the 49ers have hosted Javon Bullard for a visit. Here's the visit list. 18 players documented so far. Safety Javon Bullard, as you can see, added to the bottom of the list. Kirby Smart has said that Javon Bullard is like a little stick of dynamite. This is a guy that was the defensive player of the game in the national championship game 2 seasons ago. He's 5'10", 4'4", 7 speed, but he literally played the star at Georgia. And then he moved to a more standard safety position when they needed him there. But he was able to show that he could fit at any of those roles. And I think he could probably in college have fit at an outside cornerback role purely. Not sure if that's going to be the case in the NFL, but I mean, he is decently fast. Doesn't have excellent 4.3 speed, but 4.47 will cut it. The instincts for Javon Bullard, though, the big hits, the ability to sniff out where the football is going to go, the ability to support the run, but also be able to track the ball in coverage, he might be the star that Brandon Staley is looking for. Now, as far as a player on the roster right now that might be able to best fit it, I think it's this guy right here. I think it is Diamador Lenore. I think that Lenore just naturally is going to be moving from outside to inside because he's the 49ers' top candidate for the nickelback spot as we speak. But depending on what happens in the draft, if you do slot in somebody like Javon Bullard, it could give the 49ers a whole lot more optionality at that nickelback. And hell, even the safety position. Remember 2 seasons ago, they broke Talanoa Hufanga into the lineup as a third safety. The star typically in the Georgia sense of it, I put Kirby Smart star at George. That's not good. I got to make that spelling correction here. Boom. We have fixed it. The star at Georgia typically replaced the Sam linebacker. So it was like a nickelback of sorts, but a nickelback with more versatility than your typical nickelback. If you run a 3 safety set, you're probably taking that third linebacker off the field as well, but you're coming at the star position from a different angle. So keep in mind that the 49ers have plenty of opportunities here. This won't be the first time that they've introduced some versatility and adaptability to the back end, but I think that they brought Brandon Staley in to be the mad scientist on the whiteboard that does allow the defense to evolve to another level. And a little stick of dynamite, that's Kirby Smart's words on the 5'10" Javon Bullard. I think that could be a good fit for the 49ers. You could look at Cooper DeJean from Iowa as well as a potentially really versatile player on the back end. Although DeJean's going to be more of a, I think, first-round lock at this point after he had an excellent pre-draft workout. You look at Javon Bullard, this is probably a second or third round player because he's not an exceptional athlete by the testing. He's a good athlete, excellent instincts. The NFL is going to love the fact that he was able to seamlessly change positions, play that really versatile star position at Georgia. Brandon Staley might love that as well. But the second and third round projection still seems more realistic for somebody like Javon Bullard, who, again, if you want to look at the visit list, has recently visited the 49ers. So if you have a couple questions, I'm happy to answer them. By the way, Dane Brugler, I got some of his scouting report on Javon Bullard for this show. He's come out with a mock draft, and I evaluated Dane's mock draft right here. I know you guys, some of you like mock drafts. I came out with one of my own last week. I'm going to have another mock draft before everything really gets rolling, just over a week before the draft. But in the meantime, here's a 1,500-word analysis of Dane Brugler's 10-pick mock draft. That's Johnny Newton, his first pick at number 31, defensive tackle out of Illinois. And there's Luke McCaffrey on the right side. So McCaffrey, 49ers legacy pick, on his way to San Francisco, according to Dane Brugler, who correctly, like me, we both had this one right. I have to, sorry, I'm going to pat myself on the back. We mocked Cameron Latu to the 49ers last year. Not like it was a great pick so far. We'll see. Latu still has another chance to prove himself, but at least we got it right last season. So we'll see if I get one of these right this year. My final mock draft coming up next week is going to be my best stab at predictions. Everything up to this point, I was just trying to show you how the 49ers might maneuver, trade up, trade down, stuff like that. All right, I'm going to answer a couple. Let's go. You can go check this out up on The Athletic. And here's another thing. If the 49ers do get Isaiah Simmons, Isaiah Simmons, the former Clemson linebacker, if they get Justin Simmons, formerly the Denver Broncos, I think that, yes, he'd play start because he's played under Vic Fangio, and Brandon Staley came up under Vic Fangio, and you could see all these defensive ideas from the Belichick side of things to the Fangio side of things kind of meld together. And the goal of bringing Brandon Staley in was for the 49ers to go back to their roots as far as the front, as far as the run defense, how the front and the coverage tied together, but also to allow that back end to evolve. I think that's something that started to happen under Steve Wilkes. I think that's part of what he did well, was allowing some of the defensive cover combinations to evolve, but they didn't tie it together as well as they would have liked. And now the 49ers have changed strategies. They went in-house with defensive coordinator, and the new mind in the room, the new ideas, the fresh ideas are going to be coming from a whiteboard role, not a defensive coordinator role in Brandon Staley. Yeah, Barrows does the draft crush thing every year. That's his thing. I don't really have one. I'm not going to steal Barrows' thunder with that, but his draft crush is out. You can check that out on The Athletic as well. I don't think that Hufanga might be a more safety-oriented star position, but again, stars come in different shapes and sizes. So the corner-oriented star, that was Jalen Ramsey. Hufanga might be more of the Derwin James type. And Deommodore Lenoir would be more of a Ramsey type. But I think Lenoir's got a tremendously unique skill set. I mean, the hyena thing is a perfect descriptor of him. He's shorter than a player like Jalen Ramsey. I think that could give him certain advantages in close quarters. I mean, he's scrappy. Again, we go back to the hyena descriptor. I think he could be a really good star that gives you a little bit of everything that you want from that versatile position. The Brandon Staley villain arc begins. No, I think this is overplayed. First off, the 49ers didn't put John Lynch and Chris Foerster online. The University of Washington did. They had them in Huskies gear, and they put them up there. Guys, coaches, GM, scout players, I don't think it's a secret that the 49ers are interested in offensive linemen. Last year, they said, yeah, we would have drafted an offensive lineman if we felt that it was somebody that could immediately improve our team. And they didn't pick until late in the third round, so they didn't see any types of prospects that would fit that criteria. This year, they pick a number 31, so I think it's a whole lot more likely. So going and looking at Roger Rosengarten and a lot of other Huskies players, that was the team that was in the national championship game. You should send your guys out there. And they had Troy Fotanu on the left side, they had Rosengarten on the right. Yeah, scout them. I think even if they don't show up on social media as participants or visitors at Washington's spring practice, then people would still be able to figure out that the 49ers might be interested in an offensive lineman. So no, I don't think that changed anything. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Just wanted to bring another name to your attention. Obviously, the Brandon Staley effect, but Javon Bullard might be a player that fits a new 49ers position.